I think most people are familiar with the concept of diversification, right? Which is I'll do some safer stuff with some of my money, and I'll do some riskier stuff with some of my other money.
That's probably the approach for people now because they still want to have something to fall back on. So
right.
say the stock market crashes, they're like, I lost all my stuff.
Right, exactly. Well, even in the stock market, right? So we talk about the stock market and the risk associated with it and the fact that people don't want to lose their money, but the stock market historically has averaged about 10 to 11% every year, including dividends, right? So dividends are like certain companies incentivize you to invest money in their company by paying you every 3 months or every 6 months, right? So they'll say, hey, we made a great profit this quarter. For every share that you own, we'll give you 50 cents back, right? So the stock market has averaged 10 to 11% with dividends, and the dividends being reinvested. Once you take into account inflation, right? So we talk about inflation. Mm-hmm. That's another reason, right? So the stock market has averaged 10 to 11%, but guess what? Because of inflation, your investments have actually only averaged 7 to 8% in real money, right? Your buying power has only grown by 7 or 8%, even though you've made a return of 10 to 11% in absolute dollars. Mm-hmm. You understand? But in the stock market, one of the reasons why I encourage people to get into the stock market is because they have investments that diversify for you, right? Yeah, they're called index funds, right? So an index fund is, they'll pick out a bunch of companies for you. A lot of times it will mirror the Dow Jones, you know what I mean, or the S&P 500, right? So if you look at a chart for the Dow Jones or the S&P 500, if you look at it for the last 40 years, it's going up over time, right? So what they'll do is they'll pick a bunch of stocks, right, that are basically will mimic the Dow Jones because they know that the Dow Jones over time is going up. You're going to get solid dividends. You're going to be invested in what are called blue chip stocks. Blue chip stocks are like the biggest companies that, you know what I mean, are reliable. You kind of know that they're going to be around. You don't have to worry about them going bankrupt and stuff like that. Your AT&Ts, your Bank of America, you know what I mean, like the staple companies, Apple, you know, those are blue chip. Exactly. But what is also in the index fund is they may have a portion of your money in municipal bonds. They may have a portion of your money in treasury bills, right, which are basically federal bonds, right? So a municipal bond is at the local level, and a treasury bill is at the federal level.
All right. So say I say this. I want to invest $20,000. Mm-hmm. How much will I have by the time of retire? 20 years later.
Oh, I mean, it's very hard to say.
There ain't a guesstimate.
You could make an assumption. I mean, you have to kind of sit down and go through some different scenarios. So, all right, what you basically touched on with that question, there's something called a Monte Carlo simulation. You ever heard of that before?
No, I never.
All right, a Monte Carlo simulation. So we talk about this a lot in finance. This is one of the things we had to like kind of really be in tune with as I was going through school to get my financial planning degree. But a Monte Carlo simulation basically simulates like 1,000 different scenarios.
Oh, all right.
You know what I mean?
Like possibilities.
Right, 1,000 different and it'll spit out kind of the most. You know what I mean? So it's like
a more likely way.
Exactly. You'll put your information in, how much money you make every year. Do you plan on adding to that 20,000 every year? Right. You'll put all of that information in, and the Monte Carlo simulation will spit out a bunch of different scenarios. Right? Because you have no idea the year that you decide to retire or the year that you decide to de-invest, right, which is withdraw your money.
Yeah, right.
You don't know if it's going to be a year like 2008. Where the market was crashing like crazy, or it could be a year like the past couple of years where the market, or probably a few years before that, last couple of years have been a little stagnant. But since 2009, we've enjoyed one of the greatest bull runs, right? Which is a bull run is when the stock is going up, bear run is when the stock market is going down. We've enjoyed one of the best bull runs in the history of the stock market over the last 8 or 9 years, right? So you might decide to de-invest in a great time when stocks are up and everything is going great. Dividends are paying out great, you know what I mean? So it's really hard to say. It all depends on timing, what you invested in.
I mean, like, how much can that average? You like, so the 20 grand, what can it turn into? Ultimately, what can it turn into? Like 200 grand or more than that? Can it grow more than that?
It could. It depends
on what you add into it.
Right. It depends on when you invested. So this is one of the crazy things that like really blew my mind when I was going through school. Right. So the professor got up in front of the class and he gave us an example. He said, if this person started investing $100 a month when they were 18 years old, and they retired at 65 and added X amount of dollars each month, you know what I mean? Or they added the $100 each month. Or would you rather be that person, or would you rather be the person who didn't start investing until they was, let's say, 27, right? But was adding $5 grand a month every year to their account? Which person would you rather be?
The one that was 18, right?
Right. So as a young guy in that class, I'm thinking, man, my man is putting a whole lot more money in. He should be expected to get no. Because of the time horizon of the 18-year-old, just a 7 or 8 years, or 8 or 9 years earlier, just putting the $100 a month in and having done it 9 years earlier, he would have more money at the end of the day than the guy that started putting in $5 grand a month by the time he was 28.